Hello, welcome to another episode of the Unmet Style Podcast. I'm here with Dave McFarland, who has written several books. He's written a missing manual on JavaScript and CSS and Dreamweaver, that sort of stuff. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dave.
Well, I actually have a background in print design.
Okay.
I mean, talking 20 years ago, I designed magazines, lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, got into the web in '95, and built an online magazine for a company, became the webmaster at UC Berkeley, and did that for a while. Started a company with a couple guys in San Francisco Bay Area, and then I got into writing, and I've written several books for O'Reilly. I wrote the Dreamweaver Missing Manual, JavaScript, and CSS. And I'm mostly a writer. I write for publications and websites. I also teach at Portland State University. They have a multimedia program. And I'm still a web developer too. I have some clients and do that stuff, work for myself. And it's a pretty good life. Mostly I'm just trying to stay on top of the technology and keep my head afloat because the industry evolves and changes so quickly.
So you're here at the In Control conference in Orlando talking about jQuery. You're a JavaScript writer, programmer, but you're here talking about jQuery. Why jQuery? Why are you so into jQuery?
Well, actually, when I was approached to write a book about JavaScript and by O'Reilly, and I said, look, I could write a JavaScript book, and it'd be about 1,000 pages long, and when they were done, the readers could do these handful of little things. I said, or I could write a book that's the introduction to JavaScript, things that they need to know about the language, and then jump right to jQuery, and by the time they're done, they're building kick-ass user interfaces. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that. User interfaces, incredibly dynamic, interactive websites using jQuery. So I said that's a no-brainer, and they bought it. And so my book really, it's called JavaScript, the Missing Manual. We're revising it. It'll be called jQuery and JavaScript, the Missing Manual, because really it is about jQuery. jQuery takes all the complexity of JavaScript and hides that. And so you jump in, and you are 5 years ahead of somebody who is wanting to learn JavaScript from the ground up. And it is a beautiful thing for designers because a lot of the syntax, the way that you understand how to use it, is based on CSS selectors and things that we as designers understand already. So it's beautiful, concise, and fast. Works across all web browsers from IE6 up. So you can do things so quickly, so rapidly that it's embraced not just by the novices, by designers, but by professionals, by major websites. Google uses it in some of their properties, CNN, NBC, major websites. By some estimates, 25% of websites have jQuery running on it in some form or another.
I believe that. Why do you think jQuery is so strong? Why do you think it, because we started off with Prototype and Scriptaculous, and why do you think jQuery is just taken off like it has over those guys?
Well, I think there's a bunch of different things that played into it. I think one is John Resig, when he created it, he did have this idea of designers in mind, that the idea was for designers to enable them, and used this, like the CSS selector mechanism, as a way of accessing the DOM of a web page to manipulate it, and that was brilliant. He's also just a brilliant guy. He wrote a very concise library. It was very small when it started out, still small. They're obsessed with optimizing it in terms of speed and performance and keeping it sort of to a bare bones toolkit that people can build off of. So I think that all those things working together, that it's not just, a designer-friendly tool, but it's optimized, it's got incredible performance, and it jump starts anybody, whether they're a seasoned JavaScript professional or designer. On top of that, there's this huge community of people who have embraced jQuery, who are writing plugins, which are just basically take jQuery and do something super duper cool with it. And so designers can do really amazing things without even learning any programming. They use jQuery, a plugin, and they've got some fantastic slideshow working for them in a matter of minutes.
Right, that is pretty great.
Yeah.
So along the same lines, though, they're coming out with a new mobile, sort of like a mobile UI kit.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Are you going to jump right on that when it comes out?
Yeah, I have barely touched it.
I've
looked at a few examples. It's an alpha now, but it's pretty phenomenal. It's pretty incredible. I was looking at an example. One of the speakers here was showing me that he dropped in sort of a template-based template of starter pages and stuff, and it has all the CSS, and it has all this amazing programming built into it where you just swipe or tap and the page moves over and there's a new panel.
Right.
And he didn't do that. It was just sort of, that was the template, and then he added his content. It's also cool because they're aiming for a really broad audience, not just Android, not just iOS, iPhone stuff. It's Nokia. It's all these other web-enabled devices that are used by millions of people who don't use Android and don't use iPhones. And so it's going to have a much broader reach, I think, than some of these people who are targeting just these, really elite smartphones. I think it's great. I think it's going to take off. I think it's going to make enable web developers to build mobile sites and even mobile apps. If you use something like PhoneGap, where you can basically port it to, you can make an app that'll go to Android, use the iPhone SDK to make an iPhone application. Because mobile's here to stay, and it is growing.
Yes.
And I think web designers need to get on this. They need to embrace it and understand that building a static website is not all there is to it anymore. They have to have some ability to make it mobile, whether that's using like media queries, CSS3 media queries, or using a dedicated sort of framework like jQuery mobile.
Right. I think the biggest testament to that is that Rezig himself has taken that project over, right?
Yeah,
He's like the main guy on that now.
Yeah, and he's created, from what I understand, some super lab with tons of phones and every emulator he could find. So he's, I'm sure testing is a bear. They must have 30 or 40 different devices that they are, at least, I don't know, but tons of stuff that they're testing. Wow. And they go way back. They're looking at not just what comes out this year, but stuff that's been out for a few years, even 4 or 5 years, that are still in use by people. Yeah.
Everybody has to use a BlackBerry, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
So what's got you most excited about jQuery right now? Like, what are you most excited about when you crank open your editor and start doing stuff? That's a good question. I mean, I guess it's whatever I imagine I can pretty much do with jQuery. Mm-hmm. I was approached to build a game for one of my clients, and I'd done Flash development, but this was years before, and I'd built a bunch of Flash games for them, and I've pretty much given up on Flash. I'm not saying anything bad about Flash. It's just there's too much technology, and I said I got to learn HTML, CSS, PHP, and that's what I will do. Flash, you're gone from my brain. I can't handle you. So they approached me, and I said, okay, I can do this, but we have to do this. It's going to be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so I wrote, this pretty interactive animations. It's got sound. It's this application for fire department to teach fire safety. And so there's voiceovers and sound effects and all these different things that are happening. And I did that in jQuery, and miraculously I did it in I thought this would be a really complex thing. I did it in 4 days. Wow.
And then I got the call that it had to work in IE6. And I said, oh, man. Okay, well, so then I opened IE6 and I launched it, and it worked. That's one of the things about jQuery is they've tested it to make these things, the functions and all the stuff that jQuery offers, works in IE6. So I was like, whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for coming.
All right.
Thanks for talking to us, and see you soon.
Great. Thanks a lot.